Hello, and welcome to the CHABSS podcast, where we'll talk about all of the news, events, and amazing stories coming out of the College of Humanities, Arts, Behavioral, and Social Sciences here at CSUSM. I'm your host, Tim Meehan, and this is our very first episode, our debut episode, and the theme is career readiness and all the things that CHABSS is trying to do to help students prepare for life after graduation. We'll be joined later on by Dr. Marisol Clark-Ibáñez, a professor of sociology, and she'll talk about a couple of really cool programs that she runs to help students prepare for careers. We'll also be joined by Dean Gubkin. She'll talk with our communications student, Arlette Hernandez, about what the Dean's Office does to try to support in this area. And then our very first guest, our debut guest of the podcast, is Dr. Brandon Moore, Assistant Professor of Sociology. Brandon, thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here, Tim.
You've only been on campus toward the end of your second year now, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
You've already had a tremendous impact on the students. I know that firsthand from students that I've spoken to for other stories. It strikes me that your focus, or one of your foci is in teaching, is to reach out specifically to students. Do you feel that that's an important part of the work you do?
Yeah, for sure. Especially I feel like as a first generation student, I didn't have many faculty members really reach out when I was an undergrad. And so I think for me, there's a lot of the hidden curriculum we'll talk about, whether it's an undergrad or grad school, that students just don't understand what college is like. It's such a big shift from the K through 12 environment where you actually have to take charge of your education and you have to really reach out for resources. And it's not, you've had a lot of opportunities when you're in K through 12 to build community and people support you and teachers know how to look out for you. But in the college environment, sometimes you can get lost. And so I really take it upon myself to really try to help those students, knowing that we work at a university that has a lot of first gen students, try to figure out those resources, figure out the hidden curriculum, and make the most of their time here at CSUSM.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to read this directly from your website because I think it's amazingly written in a short period. Your research aims to investigate why and how stigmas become socially entrenched, as well as how the resulting inequities impact health and collective identity. With that in mind, what would you feel is your strong suit or your expertise as a teacher?
Yeah, I think for me, as a sociologist, I say I have kind of 5 areas that I really focus in, which are gender, sexuality, health, the population level. I do a lot of work in generations and trying to understand generational differences. And then collective memory is something that I came into when I was doing my dissertation that I found fascinating. Collective memory we think about as kind of how do groups of people come to form kind of their knowledge, their information, and their memory of events. So it's different than history in the sense that it's kind of how do we remember what happened to us and how do we talk about it with each other. And so for me, I think my dissertation looked at HIV/AIDS and how it is a cultural trauma for the queer community, especially gay men, that still shapes how not only do they kind of think about HIV generally speaking, but also how they think about preventing HIV in their own lives. There's been a lot of really great innovations in HIV medicine to where now it's no longer something we just treat. It's something that can actually, with medicine, prevent HIV infection. Mm-hmm. But the one thing I saw as I was doing my dissertation was that there was a lot of generational divides of how people felt comfortable or uncomfortable using this medication called PrEP. And I thought it was fascinating and I couldn't understand, but I started to see generational differences of older people were more reluctant, younger people were more embracive. And I was like, what is going on here? I started at my master's, I couldn't quite understand it. And so I thought it was stigma. And I think it is still a part of stigma. But what I kept finding more and more was that these older men talk about just the trauma of the HIV/AIDS crisis, of seeing entire swaths of their community gone. And for me as a gay man coming into the community, there's an entire generation missing of people who should be my elders mentoring me. And so it's kind of my love letter to the gay community in a sense of just trying to figure out how do we kind of move past it to embrace the technology of today while also remembering the past hurt and the mistrust that comes from living in an environment that was homophobic for a long time, still homophobic in some ways. But we still got to protect ourselves and prevent this horrible disease from hurting our community and other communities. And so I think it provides a really nice lens that students can kind of zoom in and see the queer community and how it really impacted the queer community. And I think my work resonates with them, even if they're not queer, just to be able to kind of wrap their heads around how a population health issue can be so disruptive to an entire community. And I think COVID-19 also dovetailed nicely with the work in a sense that students had an entry point to understand pandemics and understand how just life altering they could be. And so I think that's the joy of my work, is that I get to do stuff for my community, but also I get to tell students about something that really impacts their lives in a way that I think we're still trying to understand after COVID-19. And so I think it really resonates, and a lot of them want to do research with me, and I also enjoy getting students involved in research by doing that. So that's a cool opportunity.
You're co-hosting Tuesday Tips with our second guest, which include things like building a resume and CV, preparing for graduate school, making the most of their summer, and searching for jobs. What's been the biggest surprise you've encountered in this program?
Yeah, I think I've done programming in the past when I was in grad school, and I worked in college admissions for a little while before coming to grad school or going to grad school. And I always remember the events kind of being dull in some ways, and we couldn't really form a real kind of sense of community. And I think that's been the shocking thing with Tuesday Tips, is it's really become a sense of community for a lot of us. For me, getting to know Dr. Clark-Ibáñez, who's my all-star mentor here, definitely my go-to always, and arguably best friend. I think for us, it's been great to form community, but then also to see the care and affection we show towards each other really pass along to our students and come through, and how we care for them as well. And yes, we have a great Tuesday Tips series where we go through and guide them through these workshops, but really I think the heart of the community is the networking that happens between students, but also us connecting them to resources in our community, so they can get internships and things like that. But then also on top of it all, just kind of the sense of community that extends beyond those Tuesday Tip sessions, in terms of we're looking over grad school recommendations, we're looking over, grad school applications, we're writing recommendations, we're looking over CVs, looking over resumes. And yes, it's a little extra work on our part, but it's really nice to then see those students translate, that hard work we're both doing into something cool for them and a cool opportunity. And they really like giving back that space. And I've definitely seen too that, even more senior students that come back are even helping mentor the young students really quickly. And yeah, maybe a small little group, but I think it's a really powerful one. And I think it's a good kind of blueprint of what I think CHABSS should be doing a lot more of, because I do think our students are eager to connect what they're learning in the classroom to a career. And I think this is one of the few opportunities where we really have those opportunities to build a skill that's going to really help them take that next step, beyond just knowing the knowledge that they're getting in class.
In your Introduction to Sociology course, you have a unique activity to end the class. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it's called Developing Your Sociological Skill Sets, and I do it at the end. The last 3 classes I kind of spend focusing on here's what we've learned this semester. Here are some career options that could exist for you if you want to continue working in this area. Really highlighting human services roles, education, government work, nonprofit work. And then I task students to go out and find 3 jobs that actual job ads that they would look at and want to apply to maybe when they are done with their undergraduate. So entry-level jobs I really focus on. And then I have them kind of work backwards. I say, okay, well, here's the skill sets they're looking for. What are the things you have? What are the things we've been working on in this class? And what are the things that you maybe need to develop outside sociology that may be to be this perfect candidate to be a fit for this job? And so I do that work. And then I direct them to, I say, hey, go look at the course catalog, identify 2 sociology classes you'd want to take that you feel are helping towards these skill sets, and 2 non-sociology classes that are helping towards these skill sets. They complete the assignment. I give them feedback on, I think that's a good fit, or hey, make sure you take Soc 360 with Dr. Bates. And then I also provide them links to kind of resources on campus to continue working with those kind of skill sets. So whether that's the Career Center here, or a student club on campus that's more kind of pre-law focused or something to kind of help students as they're coming into campus, get acquainted with what's all around them, and leave Soc 101 with a little bit of a game plan of what can I do with this? What am I going to do with my 4-year career here to make the most out of each semester? So I'm not just kind of going with the flow, but rather there's an intentionality I put behind each of the classes I'm taking. And I find just doing that extra care work right at the beginning really helps students. So 101 tends to be a very, one of our welcome mats kind of to campus in a way we get a lot of transfer students that will take that class with us, or first-time freshmen who are taking that class with us. And it's a really great opportunity to start from the get-go of like, we are invested in your career success. We want to see you grow there. And let me try to help give you a little bit of a roadmap, even though that roadmap is probably going to change while you're here.
And then for our graduate students, you teach a teaching sociology course. And in that course, you have them build a syllabus for a course that they could teach or would want to teach. What's the purpose behind that?
Purpose behind that is a lot of our students, so it's the Master's of Arts in Sociological Practice program. A lot of them do want to go on to PhD programs. And one of the ways you kind of secure funding as a grad student is by teaching. And so it's either you're going to do research with a professor, or you're going to do teaching one of the classes there on campus at a big R1 university usually. And so what I wanted to do in that class is give students the tools to have the teaching part kind of handled. So they can really focus on the research part, because PhD program is going to be really intense. They're going to want to spend a lot of time on their research and getting involved in research. And so if we can build that syllabus now, that at least gives them a framework of, hey, I have something I know I can teach. They can build out the rest over, their course of their career, probably the summer before a PhD program especially. And especially there's a lot of sharing of information from one generation to the next as you're building a class for your first time. But it's a really great opportunity for them to hit the ground running and know teaching is kind of handled. And for students that aren't going on to a PhD program or not right away, there's a lot of opportunities at our community colleges and other sister colleges in the area to teach a class as a lecturer, once every few semesters. And so this can be a great kind of source of additional money for students who maybe want to do a different career and teach a little bit on the side. Like, teaching isn't my full time, but maybe something I want to do kind of as a passion project. And some people can develop full careers as just having a master's degree and lecturing at a variety of the colleges around the area. So I find that having that syllabus just really helps them go into the interview with, I have a document showing you what I value in the classroom. I'm set up to where I can start if you need me to next week.
And what could a career look like to a sociology graduate if they don't want to teach or do research?
Yeah, and that's something, for me, I'm still kind of figuring out in some ways in terms of like, what are our students doing with the master's? I have a lot of experience with that from my peers that I went to grad school with in the PhD program. And a lot of them are working in nonprofits or user experience work, whether it's for banks or for startups. Other folks doing government work for sure too. A lot of, especially sociology, tends to really gravitate toward the Census Bureau. And so a lot of career you can make for yourself, studying populations, understanding markets, a lot of skill sets we develop that can really do that. I think with a master's degree, it can be a little challenging to break into those environments, but still possible with career experience. But one thing I try to do in my teaching social class to kind of help students connect that opportunity for whatever they want to do career-wise after. I have 2 different panels. One panel, I bring in professors from different types of university settings, so community college, liberal arts, an R1 or Research 1 university where we tend to get our PhDs from, and more regional comprehensive universities, kind of like CSUSM. And so I kind of have a panel of just kind of going through and asking, what is it like to teach in these different environments? And so for our students, they walk away with an idea of kind of, I think I feel kind of like I could teach in that environment. That kind of resonates with me, or that doesn't resonate with me as much. I don't want to research as much. I want to teach more. And that's something the panel really helps students see. On the other end, I do have another panel that's more of like lifelong teaching, in a sense of you're not going to be in a career where you're going into the classroom every day, but we still have a task as sociologists to continue educating the world on sociological perspectives and taking a more sociological lens to the world. And so with that, I have people come in from industry. So one of my friends from the banking world's coming in, a friend from the Census Bureau, a friend from nonprofit world. Again, to kind of tell students in this teaching social class, yes, there is some teaching you're doing as well in these jobs. You're educating people about how to take a sociological perspective. why we should look at things more sociological rather than, try to make more psychological or individualistic, and how it can benefit, your community, or it can benefit your business. And so I think with both of those, I kind of try to meet students where they're coming at in MASP, of understanding there's different priorities of why we're getting a master's degree. And I think while it's a challenge that most universities shy away from, I think it's one that I'm really proud in this department. We kind of tackle head on, understanding our students come from diverse places. We're not trying to prepare everyone to go to a PhD program, because we don't need that many PhDs.
You're a first generation college graduate, which I'm sure you're very proud of. How much does your personal journey factor into helping students who are also on their first gen path?
It definitely gives me a lot of perspective, and I think I'm always mindful of it as I'm interacting with students and asking them about their story and asking them kind of what they're struggling with in their day-to-day. I am a first gen student. I grew up in Austin, Texas, and went to undergrad in Washington, D.C. And I remember just being so lost. My college, when I went in 2010, 2014, first gen wasn't something we talked about very much then, really. And there were no services on campus. And I remember just seeing peers around me getting internships in year one. And I was just like, how do you do that? I was just so lost. And I ended up finding my way to undergraduate admissions, worked as a work study student there for a while, and kept selling this university that I was loving, but I didn't feel like I was able to make the most of, because I didn't have those first gen skills. And so for me, I ended up finally interning on Capitol Hill for one of the few Democrats from Texas in my senior year as my capstone as my sociology course. And my other friends had, been on 3 deep internships by then. And I was just kind of devastated in some ways of like, it was cool, but I also remember feeling totally defeated, because I was like, I came here wanting to study politics, and I'm leaving my internship saying I never want to work in politics ever. And I was very lost. And so for me, luckily, undergraduate admissions ended up being where I landed. And like, I worked there for 2 years after undergrad. But I worked at a campus that was over 60% first gen. And it was the first time I was on a college campus, and I felt like I understood the students around me really well. They came from families that they were trying to be leaders for little brothers and little sisters, trying to make their parents proud, live up to the promise, their parents had worked so hard for. And so I really noticed in that moment, in those 2 years working at UW, I worked at University of Washington, Tacoma, and I just realized like that was my calling. And so for me, that grounded a lot of my graduate work. I always found, even at Ohio State, I was surrounded by working class and first gen students that I just naturally got at a different level. And I was their recommendation writers. I was getting them involved in my research projects really early on. And so I feel like part of my graduate training was just learning how to incorporate first gen and working class students into my work. And so it's been a natural fit here as well, because I'm working with the same types of students, even maybe more percent-wise of our population is first gen and working class. And so it's incredible to give students that opportunity to, figure out research, figure out if that's for them. And I always tell them too, when we're thinking about internships and research too, of, a lot of this is just learning and just figuring out if this is what you want to do or not. This is training wheels in a sense. Like before you make the deep dive and commit to, going on to a PhD program, or commit to saying you want that job for sure, taking advantage of internships and research opportunities is a chance to just figure out if it's for you or not. And that there's no hard feelings if it isn't. I think that's something that's really important for our first gen students. And I think that the opportunities I see available here to us at CSUSM to get students that in a more personal way, even though we are part of a big university system, we can still have that very intentional individual interaction with our students.
Let's finish with a couple of fun questions.
Yeah.
What's your favorite activity to do in your free time, if you have free time? Get that part of it. And what is your favorite part about working at CSUSM?
Yeah, not a ton as as assistant professor, but you still find time, and that's definitely something you got to do. I feel like for me, getting over to Palm Springs is my real getaway spot. I really enjoy being in the pool all day. And I really feel like I understand dry heat more than I ever did before. But it's really cool to get out of the pool and just be instantly dry. So that's always my kind of getaway spot. And luckily for us here, it's only about an hour and a half from campus. So it's a really good getaway spot. And for me, it's kind of allows me to be in queer culture and queer community as well.
And your favorite part about working at CSUSM?
Yeah, I think I previewed a little earlier too, but it was just the level of family I feel within my own department is incredible. It was something I felt when I interviewed here for the first time. Actually, Dr. Clark-Ibáñez was the one who picked me up from the hotel to bring me to the interview for the first day, and we were just talking about her kids being in band. And I was a big band kid growing up and did band in college, and now I go to their marching band performances and stuff, and it's a really great time. And I think, like, yes, my relationship with Dr. Clark-Ibáñez is very special and unique, I think, in some ways, but I think all of my colleagues I have that kind of connection with, that there's some kind of bond we have that extends beyond our work. And it's been really fulfilling, and it's something that I haven't felt often in higher education. But I can honestly say that I feel it here, and I think that was something I felt from the moment I stepped foot on campus, that I felt like people were invested in me, wanting to be here, but also invested in our students and kept our priorities straight around that. And that was a really nice change from coming from the Research One world, R1 world, where so much of the focus is on me, my research, getting all the fame I can. That's just not the focus here. And that's been a real bond. And then the CHABSS community as a whole too, beyond that, has just been fantastic, of finding colleagues from other departments that don't see me as competition, but rather want to work with me and are like, hey, let me bring you on this project. And I have a friend in social sciences who's bringing me on like a teaching sociology project. Andy's been giving me tons of advice in terms of kind of where to go with publications, what publication outlets. And I think we see research opportunities together. So I just feel like it's a collaborative space that really embraces the promise of higher education in a lot of ways.
Thank you so much for everything you do for CSUSM students. Thank you so much for joining us today and being our very first guest.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Our next guest is Marisol Clark-Ibáñez, sociology professor, who is also the current recipient of the Harry E. Brakebill Distinguished Professor Award, which annually acknowledges a CSUSM professor who demonstrates excellence in teaching, research, creative scholarship, and service to the university and region. That's quite a bit. Marisol, can you tell us what your expertise is in?
Sure. My training is in sociology of education, and it evolved as I've been here and inspired by students and the community on childhoods, immigration, definitely the North County Latinx communities, our region. But sociology of education is kind of my primary. That and teaching and learning, the scholarship of teaching and learning.
The Brakebill Award is the biggie. That's the one on campus that we really hang our hat on, because that means a faculty member has gone above and beyond just doing teaching or just research or just service to the community. It's overall. So can you tell us what your reaction was when you received that award and what it means to you in your long career?
Well, it was very impactful. I've seen the Brakebill recipients over all these years. I think it's in my 21st or 22nd year here. And so being nominated was a kind of a big deal. And to be honest, getting the portfolio ready, because you have to get all these letters of recommendation or letters of support from faculty, students, community members. And that, I have to say, that was very impactful. Yes, receiving it was like an incredible honor. But, reading people's support of like, oh, okay, this is what it meant. And then also, I think putting together the teaching examples that you have to do, it was really like, wow, okay. It was very clarifying to me, the approach that I take for teaching and how much I enjoy it. So in that sense, it was like, okay, it's been a long time, and it was I feel like getting the news from President Neufeld, I was in complete shock because you do this really big effort to put together your portfolio and you know you're up against like all the faculty and my amazing colleagues. And even my kids were like, what happens if you don't get it? Or do you get money? Or, you know, they had all sorts of questions. But I said, you know what? If I don't get it, I know someone really good is going to get it. Because to be up at that level is like, you know, major. And then to be awarded was just very mind-blowing. And then, as you know, you have to do a keynote talk. And that was another doubling down of like, okay, who am I about, or what am I about, or how did I get here? And so it was a grueling process. I'm not gonna, you know, kind of glamorize it. It's pretty intense to put together everything, and even after you win, but it's really rewarding. I've always felt so happy to and lucky to be at Cal State San Marcos. It's the only place I've been a professor at as a like assistant professor and tenure track. So it was like, okay, I'm here. I mean, I've been here. I've been doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it felt really great. That's the other part. It feels really good to be acknowledged because a lot of my faculty colleagues and across departments, we're all doing like really innovative or creative or super meaningful and connecting with our students. And it's oftentimes just invisible because we're just doing the do. We're just doing our work. And most of the people who I know and who I appreciate really love it. And it's not about awards or even getting recognized, but I have to say it feels really nice to be recognized. So yeah, it was very humbling and also like, wow, very, very much an honor. It was a big deal for me and my family, I suppose.
And it's almost like a culmination of your career, like almost like, okay, you can retire now. That's like everything you've done,
Right.
but you got to go back and you're still teaching, you're still working, you're doing all those things.
Yeah.
So I guess the question would be, how do you place that within your career? Is it just nice accomplishment, nice to be recognized, and now time to move on? Or it's like, I've really done everything I could?
Like I've left it all on the dance floor. Yes. On the one hand, I've always asked myself, and my other friends ask themselves too, it's like, especially when you become a full professor, it's kind of the end of the road for promotion, and you don't necessarily need to hustle. There's no outside incentive. There's no external incentive for promotion at this point in my career. And I think I've been full, oh my gosh, maybe since almost 10 years, maybe somewhere around there. I forget when I became full professor. Anyway, so I reached my end. And it's been the last, let's say 8 years or 9 years. And so you got to wonder, like, why are you doing so much? And again, why do you continue to do it? But, you know, it's for the love of the job and the love of the students. And so while I feel like it's a moment to reflect and, you know, I wish I could take a little bit of a breaky break after receiving the award. A sabbatical does not come with the award. However, I'm in my grants. I'm with all the career readiness stuff that we do in our department and teaching. So I do feel, this is a good question, or a good thing to think about, is that I feel like a couple colleagues have told me, like, you get to a point in your career and you know there's amazing faculty coming up, you're mentoring them. And so my role, I feel less of an urge to be in the middle of everything and just pushing everything along. And I do feel like I have kind of wisdom. I mean, I'm still learning, but I have wisdom and mentoring to share. So I do feel like I've maybe turned a sharper corner into mentoring, advising, supporting, rather than me myself being more in the front and center of, you know, usually within a collective, but, you know, leading in that way. I feel like very satisfied with the kind of mentoring that I'm doing of all the our folks coming up. That's felt really good. That's been kind of coming, but now maybe the award helps me, I don't know, be more comfortable with that and realize there's stages to careers, you know? So yeah, I think that's kind of the impact.
You're a mentor to our first guest, Dr. Brandon Moore. He mentioned you quite a bit. You do the Tuesday Tips with him.
Yes.
Can you tell us what that is exactly, and what was your inspiration behind creating that?
So Tuesday Tips, I'll tell you, well, let me tell you where it started. So I was our department chair for the Department of Sociology, which has sociology, criminology, and justice studies, and a graduate program of sociological practice, and 2 accelerated BA programs. So overseeing that during COVID, along with the pandemic, all the social and community strife and struggle that was happening to so many of our communities was major. But the most kind of the pressing thing as a chair, amongst all the kind of things I was dealing with, is kind of finding where students were at with their sense of community, their sense of belonging within the major and on campus. Because of course, we went fully, online. So what I created after, doing a lot of kind of reaching in, reaching back, and reaching to students for their want and need for community is something that I called Major Mondays. And ask me why I love these alliterations. I think that's what it's called. Major Mondays was meant every Monday I put on a program, and oh my gosh, they were attended. It was very large attendance, put on a program that connected something with the major. So it could have been career readiness, could have been grad school, could have been, hey, what's the difference between this class and that class? Anyway, there's a lot of programming that I did just to connect with students, fully online, and the students visited every Monday. So that's where it started. And then once we were coming back to campus, I also eased out of department chair, and now I'm in the position of an associate chair position, which is taking the lion's share of advising and with students. So we have a really large majors, large department. And so from here, I thought, well, I can't sustain it every Monday. That was really hard. Everything was hard in the pandemic. But when Dr. Brandon Moore came on board, he was an ideal partner. He has such a passion for students and energy, and he just was really connecting on campus from like day one, even probably before he got here. So we decided, I might have worked on this in the summer, but it really got solidified with him to do twice a month, a little bit something more sustainable. Now I had a partner, and now we are, true kind of co-producers, co-facilitators of this Tuesday Tips. So just like Major Mondays, the Tuesday Tips is meant to create community among our majors, our students, and our minors. And their friends. We always invite people, like if you have a friend or whatever, please bring them. We do it in person and online because we have some fully online programs. And it's for students to feel connected to their majors, yes, but it's also to be connected to each other, to faculty. So we also have faculty coming and either sharing or just being part of the experience and chiming in where needed. And so for sociologists, we think about the importance of social capital. And so it's a little bit different than social network. So social network are like who's in your network. Social capital is who you know in your network who can actually help you with a resource, symbolically or like actual resource. And so that idea of social capital is really important to sociology. It's a important concept, to other disciplines as well, but for us, but we also know it's so important for student success, academic, personal, and career. So that's the kind of foundation of what Tuesday Tips is about.
In your 491 course, Career Readiness for Sociology and Criminology and Justice Studies majors, I found this really fascinating. You create 45 activities for students to select from to get them ready for careers. Do you find that students hesitate when they're offered that much, or do they jump right into them, or a combination of both?
They definitely jump in. The problem with any class that's for a long period of time, and it's just a 1-unit class, is like you might forget about it. So the class is structured. Yes, there's over 40 activities that students choose from, but they have 1 to 2 to do each week. So what that does is the class is divided into themes, and there's a book that we use, like launching your success after graduation, career success. And so we're using the book, but we also use lectures. I set up a lecture to kind of say like, okay, here's what we're doing this week. Here's some goals. And then of the 5 that are offered this week, or the 6 or the 3 or the 7 activities, choose 1 or 2. And students can always go back and do an activity that they're like, oh, wait a minute. I think I want to do even as simple as put a signature line on your school email that is kind of informative and professional. So there's like little things, but then there's also big activities like, write your resume, write a draft. And another activity is, have someone check it over or go to the Career Center and have your resume. They have like resume review appointments. So not to inundate the Careers Center with our 491 students, but it's one of the choices that students can do throughout. Another is, for example, go on Indeed.com, find where your ideal job could be. Like, what does it take to do that job? And so they're small, discrete activities that actually build, and students by the end have like quite a bit done if they've been able to manage to do the 1 to 2 a week. Basically like a pass no fail situation. They just choose it. So we also wanted to make it like low stakes, meaning, going to Indeed.com and getting, a job description or the educational or experience requirements, and they copy and paste that into their little assignment. There's no grade for that. They did it or they didn't. And then that allows me and then other faculty who teach it to kind of go through and see like, oh, you're interested in this? Well, let me give you a resource. So it allows for kind of a constant checkup and constant interaction as students. Like the more students put into it, the more they get out of it, but the more they'll get out of it from me, because then I'll know kind of what they're interested in, how to hook them into whatever resources I think would be helpful to them.
So you're helping them create a potential path with the small steps rather than just waiting till the end and saying, what jobs have you applied for? Why is it important for students to not wait till the end and create those small paths leading up to graduation?
Well, number one, I've been doing this since I've been a department chair officially. It's like the launching out of Cal State San Marcos, out of this world called our university that's maybe presented a lot of hardships, but it's been a safe place. It's been a place where most of our students, are thriving or find some hook, and then they're about to leave us. And there's a lot that goes on in terms of, I feel, like mentally preparing. And I want to also share one of the things we do in 491, or I do in my programming too, is that most of our students already work. It's not like they're like, oh, I've never worked before. I never had a job. How do I do this? Most of our students have a lot of strengths, and now they're got it connected to their major if they're going in that direction, and then think of themselves as a career. But I would say half of my students are in what someone would call a career, but they're in school to kind of like move forward. As we know, social mobility is major on our campus. It's part of the themes of what we do. In terms of like all the career readiness is a great example of social mobility. But students, so students already have this, but there's a big block in graduation. Most students are very excited to be done. And I'm always like, wait, stay longer. Only I have the advisors, if they hear this, they'll be really mad at me. But it's because take the time to use the resources on campus. Take the time to kind of develop like, who do you think you want to be in terms of this new, like the leveling up of your career? So it's not like brand new, but a leveling up. And that takes time. And when students are so stressed, they have so many things going on outside in their lives, a lot internally. And then there's all this resources. And top thing that I recognize is most students do not use our resources while they're here. And that's kind of the inspiration of 491, because it encourages and invites students to use resources that we have on campus, and resources called their professors, to help them navigate things. Because once they leave, the saddest kind of, for me, one of the saddest things that I see out in the community, because I live right here in San Marcos, I see former students all the time, whether they were mine or they were on this campus, they have an experience of like a loss of identity, loss of resources, feel maybe a little bit adrift in the sense of like where they thought they would be and why am I still here and how do I get to the next level? And it's not to say that they cannot get there. Of course, they are going to get there. Most, I'm sure, will. But when you're here, it's like use what you have when you're here, carve out. And that's the part of 491 is just dedicate like 1 to 2 hours a week towards preparing yourself and knowing yourself and getting like all the resources that you can, so that yes, you may not have a job that you want as you're graduating. That's like kind of this ideal that I've never really heard anyone achieve. But you can have everything ready so that when you're done, you graduated, the confetti is out of your hair and you're in the summer, or if you graduate in the fall, you have so many tools that you can take with you and then now implement maybe more directly. But to think about it while you're on campus and while you have access to the Career Center, you have easier access to your professors, because there is a strange and unfortunate algorithm of students as they graduate. We have more students coming. That's a good thing. But the timeline of a professor and the bandwidth of any professor, it's like we just get more. And students are always coming and our students are leaving. And so to be able to work more with students after they've left, that's a lot more challenging. It's challenging for a student who may feel shy to come back. It's challenging for a professor who, for all best purposes, like myself, I'm like very excited to hear from students after they graduate, but the timing, like, can I commit to meeting or doing whatever to help them after they've graduated? Well, I just have a whole new set of students that are here that I'm also focused on. So there's something there's something that needs to be helping that transition. That's for another podcast maybe. Yeah. But that's why I think it's so important for students while they're here to at least, get started, get some things going, so that as they leave and they're so excited to graduate, that they have something that they can build off of. And they're not as adrift as I've noticed students can be as they leave us.
There almost needs to be 3 Monty Souls. One who helps the alumni when they're done, one while they're here. And we also have Cougar Blue Day coming up in the spring, and you're heavily involved in trying to explain all of this to potential students and parents as well. Do you enjoy that part of being forward-facing with potential students?
Absolutely. And I think as we've transitioned, our department chair, Kristen Bates, is leading that with a group of faculty, the Cougar Blue Day. I do feel like the visiting and the getting excited to future Cougars, not the ones that have just been accepted, but at the middle school, high school, those are the 2 areas, middle school and high school, that I work with in our community college students who are transferring in. So absolutely. I don't know if there needs to be more of me, but we do need more. There is a need, and that's an exciting need to have, right? That there's a lot of incoming excitement and the outgoing that need a lot of assistance, and all the current students. So yes, definitely need more. I feel like if we think about Cal State San Marcos as being a beacon in our region, that is very exciting, because I see every potential middle schooler. My kids are at San Marcos Middle School, and now my son's at Mission Hills. These are all future students. I look at them as my future students if I'm still here. Whenever I retire, who knows? And so that's exciting to connect and ask them their interests and things like that. So on informal ways and through programming I do, but also like it's a really big day when students can come to our campus. They know they've been accepted or potentially been accepted, and get them sort of oriented to our culture. I feel like our campus has talked about a culture of care, and I think that's our department really emulates that with our majors and our faculty and our courses, because we're so social justice oriented, that it's very, it's exciting to see students excited. And to be honest, having now 2 decades in this job, it helps me get excited. I mean, I'm already a very excitable person, as you already know. It's like, I feel engaged most of the time. But when I'm connecting with new students, future students, it really adds to my longevity. It adds to my feeling the pride of being here, but also sharing their vibe, their energy. It becomes a two-way street. So it's really nice.
Let's end with 2 fun questions. What do you like to do in your free time? When you have free time, you may not have any based on what you've explained, and a couple kids as well. And what's your favorite part of working at CSUSM?
So I asked my kids this question, like, oh my gosh, they're going to ask me, what do I do for my free time? And their answers range from, well, you like aqua aerobics. I'm like, that's true. I do. I love my aqua aerobics. And that was my daughter. My son was like, well, you love memes, sending them, reading them. Like, that's true. Memes are my love language. But I think that the being in the water and finding kind of humorous things to lighten the world, especially right now, those are kind of fun, very non-intellectual things. I need a lot of balance in my life for the heavy things that we do on campus, the heavy things students are going through, and what the world is experiencing. So I definitely keep things on the light side and keep things, fun and moving in my downtime, for sure. For Cal State San Marcos, I think it's pretty clear. That one I didn't need to ask my kids any advice on that one. Definitely the students. I love this new role that I'm in of associate chair. When you're a department chair, you are dealing with faculty, administration, policy. A lot is going on, scheduling. I mean, that's actually pretty fun to do. But this role of associate chair, I'm really enjoying working with students, trying to find a yes, trying to find that green light somehow, also fielding like what are their questions, their dreams, their ambitions. And I hold office hours for that on Mondays, and which this is what you'll laugh when you hear what I call this. It's called Move On It Mondays. And Move On It Mondays is my space where I invite students to come to move on their goals. What is your goal? Is your goal to pass this class? Oh my gosh, come see me for sure. Is your goal to get an internship, career? So it's kind of like a power hour where we want to like come with your questions. Let's get to work. So I love that. And it's all about the students and the resources we have on campus. So that's what makes, it's what makes me tick or whatever. Not tick, tick, boom, but tick, tick as in keep on going.
Dr. Marisol Clark-Ibáñez, thank you so much for all that you do for our students. And thank you for joining us on our very first CHABSS podcast.
All right, thank you for having me. It's been really fun. Thank you.
I'm Marlette Hernandez, a third-year communications student, and I'm joined by Dr. Leora Gubkin, the Dean of CHABSS. Now, you're in your 3rd year at STEAM. Career readiness seems to be a major focus for the college. What are some of the events and programs the Dean's office is promoting in this area?
That is a great question, Arlette. Thank you so much for asking, and thank you for the opportunity to join in this inaugural podcast. So I do want to talk a little bit about how career readiness is fitting in the strategic objectives for the entire College of Humanities, Arts, Behavioral, and Social Sciences. Right. So my first year, we did a strategic plan, took input from various stakeholders, right? Faculty and students, community members, and saw that career readiness was something that everybody wanted to lean in on. And so at the college level, we've been helping coordinate several events. So each year we hold a career week, right? We partner with the Career Center. We organize some networking with industry and community partners. We provide some of the organizational support for alumni panels and do things like programming on the power of internships. Right? So all of that is sort of Dean's office, but then we also support departments, right, who have the closer interaction with students. I know you heard from some of our amazing faculty from the Department of Sociology, and the Dean's Office does designated grant funding. We do mini grants, so when faculty have an amazing idea of how they want to help students in their career readiness goals, we will send funding their way.
And why is it important for students to keep their eyes on preparing for their careers while also focusing on school?
It's an interesting question. I think part of it depends on what a student's dream is, right? You come to college, what happens after, right? And having some sense of what you want to do after college means you can make the most of the opportunities along the way. So, and that can change throughout a student's sort of student life cycle, right? So a first-year student might be keeping career in mind by doing career exploration. Right. So maybe they came in thinking they wanted to be an accountant because they'd seen an accountant. And then they were like, but they they learn what other kinds of things are out there in the world. So taking on that career exploration, kind of an inventory of one's personal interests and skills, very appropriate in the first year. Doing that kind of work when you first get into college allows you then, as you go through your degree, right, to do things perhaps like being an intern, working with our communications specialist, right? Getting practices, gaining experiences that you'll be able to leverage as you go out post-graduation. So I think that's one of the main reasons, right? One is so that you can kind of reflect in and see what are the things you care about. And then also to take advantage to all of these opportunities that are there to build your skills. Another thing I would add is that you gain all kinds of skills that are career relevant throughout your education. And sometimes when students aren't thinking about career as they're going through, they don't always know how to articulate that. Oh, I learned how to understand the position of someone who's different than myself. Well, that's a key career skill because I'm working in a diverse company with diverse groups of people, right? So attending to career while you're getting this holistic education is just going to make you more successful on the other end.
How much more challenging is it to advise students on career paths in CHABSS since there are so many different majors and departments?
I was really intrigued by this question because we do have 25 degree programs in CHABSS, and I think it's actually a strength, right? Because then at the college level, we can look at the kinds of experiences that every student should have. Right. So this morning I was on a call with our university foundation saying, how can we bring in financial support for paid internships for all our students, right, to reduce those barriers to those experiences. But then there's also very discipline specific opportunities. So while I'm working, with folks across the university and with communities for things that will impact all of our students, then we have folks that are doing things at the disciplinary level. So like during Career Week, there were things like unlocking your career in anthropology, or, students in liberal studies joined the student organization Future Educators of America, or psychology students, take a class, psychology as a degree and a profession. So while on the one hand, it seems a little like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? We have 25 different degree programs. I think we get the best of both, right? We get to leverage our size to offer those big opportunities that are going to impact everybody. And you still should have, as a student, right, make that relationship with your professor. Join that student organization that's for your discipline, right, so that you get the best of both worlds in CHABSS.
Thank you for joining us, Dean Gubkin, and thank you for tuning in to our first episode of the CHABSS podcast.